Marshall Mathers the fourth here. I wish Back to the Future 2, or Back to the Future Part 2, in other words, which was released on November 22nd in the year 1989, I would have loved, personally, in my opinion, if it had came out and been released in the year 1987, November 22nd, 1987 to be exact, which would only have been 2 years after the first Back to the Future movie, which came out in the year 1985. And a couple other things I wish about Back to the Future 2, or Part 2 in other words, is that, number one, that the actress who played Jennifer in the first film or movie or whatever you want to call it would have came back and reprised her role as the character she played in the first film. And I am never a fan of when an actor or actress gets replaced, even if the replacement does just as good of a job as the previous actor or actress, or even better. I'm still not a fan of it, because it's obviously not the same person, but we're just, as the audience, made to believe that it's the same character, even if they look completely different and sound completely different and act and behave completely different, and if their voice sounds completely different, but we're still supposed to believe that they're the same character. It's just ridiculous. And the second thing I wish about Back to the Future 2, or Part 2, is the fact that Marty and Doc would have stayed and remained in the future for longer or more time than they actually did. Because I remember watching that movie as a kid and thinking how cool it was, because obviously I actually believed that the future would be like that. And I'm pretty sure even the people who watched that movie in theaters when it came out in the 80s also probably believed and thought at the time in which it came out that the future in the year 2015 will have all this cool futuristic shit or whatever. And the sad reality of things is it didn't. And we're in 2019 and we still don't have flying cars or shoes that tie themselves or hoverboards or whatever. And that's why I personally strongly wish that Back to the Future 2 would have taken place in the future, but for more an extended period of time, and that Doc and Marty would have stayed and remained in the future longer than they actually did, either for most of the movie or at least half of the movie or something like that, because they hardly were in the future that long. And that is the truth, the sad truth, because then in the second one they had to go back to the 50s because, of course, Biff, his old self, went back to the past to his young self to give himself the book that would pretty much predict the future, because it would predict all the winnings or whatever of every single sport. And that's why they had to. Otherwise, they wouldn't have, and they probably would have just gone back to the 80s and then the movie would have been over. But I personally wish that even if the director, producer, writer, or whatever had to come up with more ideas or whatever to have Doc and Marty stay and remain in the future for a much longer period of time, I would have honestly loved that. And those are the things that I wish would have been different about Back to the Future 2, or Part 2 in other words. And of course the fact that it would have been released, that I wish it would have been released on November 22nd in the year 1987, being only 2 years after the first film came out, and that the actress who played Jennifer in the first film would have returned, or in other words reprised her role. I'm out.